Hi, everybody. Welcome to That's Inclusive. This is Vanessa Blaze, and I'm here today with Pat and Seana. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Thank you. So happy to be here in person with both of you.
I know, this is awesome.
I'm very excited.
Yep, we're actually in the studio today, so we're really excited about that, and we're going to be checking out their new studio, temporary new studio. They're moving it because they're going to be doing some work here at Concord High School. So we're going to be having an opportunity to go over to their, what do we call it, remote studio?
Nice. Temporary studio.
Temporary studio.
I don't know. I like that school better. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
It's more accessible.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So we'll have to invite Seana to come with us.
Thank you. Now that I just found where I'm going, I'll have to switch it up again.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
it's okay. Keep me on my toes.
This will be easier. So today, we wanted to start off by highlighting some of the advocates who've come before us and the importance of carrying on the work that they did to bring awareness and solutions to the injustice that has been done upon marginalized people who are left out of mainstream American society because of their race, gender, identity, class status, disability, on and on and on. So these are the people that we're looking to for motivation and guidance, both in an organizational sense and for myself in a spiritual sense. And when we feel that we've lost our way or that the rug has been pulled out from under us and we need to decide how to proceed, we can look to past leaders who forged the path before us. And we can connect with their hopes and their dreams and their fears and learn from their successes and failures. And most importantly, we can reflect on the fact that they are mere human beings that are taking risks and giving themselves to leave this world a little bit better than they did when they got here. So we're going to let Pat start by talking about the advocate that she wanted to highlight today.
Hey, so I bet a lot of people in our audience have heard of the Olmstead decision. It was the Supreme Court decision that said states need to provide services to people with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. That's what it's best known for. I started getting more interested in it again, as people have been talking about recently cutting back like HICPIC services. But HICPIC services are the services that enable states to follow the Olmstead decision. The original court case was called Olmstead versus LC, and the LC in the decision, in the case, was Lois Curtis. And Lois had a really interesting, at times heartbreaking backstory. She was born in the late 60s in Atlanta, Georgia. Her family is a poor, lower income Black family, and she was given like several different labels. I don't think they were really good at diagnosing different developmental disabilities in that day. She was given psychiatric labels. She kept wandering from home, wandering from school, and the police would end up taking her to the hospital. A couple times they even ended up putting her in jail. As a kid, at 11 years old, she ended up full-time in the Georgia Regional Hospital, which again is primarily a psychiatric hospital. Services for people, even if they do have a psychiatric disability at the time, were not great. So all they did was heavily medicate her. She's not getting services for her intellectual disability. She spends several years in the hospital, but then the doctors say she doesn't need to be here anymore. She could be fine on her own. But so they keep sending her out of the hospital. but because there are no supportive services in the community, she goes back to the hospital several times over the next 10 years. And she somehow gets in touch, and this is kind of, the articles were not really specific. It sounded like when I listened to the lawyer that she worked with, that the lawyer had been going into the hospital regularly just to meet with people and make sure that their rights were being preserved. And so Lois every time would say, I need to get out of here. Please get me out of here. I don't belong here. She was calling them regularly. So finally in 95, they filed a lawsuit. The Atlanta Legal Aid Society filed a lawsuit on behalf of Lois and another woman, Elaine Wilson, against Tommy Olmsted, who at the time was the commissioner of the Georgia Department of Human Resources, which seemed like a weird thing to call it. And they're like, did they mean Health and Human Services? But everywhere I looked, it always said Human Resources. So I'm going to take their word for it. So I just, personal note is I find it annoying that it's called the Olmsted decision when Tommy Olmsted was the problem, not the solution. But so she won in regional federal court. They were suing the state for unjustified segregation as discrimination under the ADA. The regional federal court found in Lois's favor, but the state of Georgia appealed to the Supreme Court. Now, their claim here is that they can't afford to provide her the services she needs in the community. But they're already providing her the services. They're just doing it in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1999, the Supreme Court ruled in Lois's favor, and our gal, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, writes, confinement in an institution severely diminishes the everyday life activities of individuals, including family relations, social contacts, work options, economic independence, educational advancement, and cultural enrichment. After the Supreme Court ruling, it took her a while to find a good fit. I guess she ended up in some group home situations that didn't work for her, but eventually she did find her own apartment with appropriate supports. In 2011, she met President Barack Obama and presented her with a self-portrait. She made quite a bit of money selling her artwork over the years. So when asked what she wished for all people that she had helped move out of the institution, she said, I hope they live long lives and have their own place. I hope they make money. I hope they learn every day. I hope they meet new people, celebrate their birthdays, write letters, clean up, go to friends' houses, and drink coffee. I hope they have a good breakfast every day, call people on the phone, and feel safe. So to me, Lois is just a great example of just keep going, right? Just keep, if you know something is not right, just keep pointing it out. It took her many, many years, but she eventually ended up in the perfect space for her. Lois died in 2022 of pancreatic cancer in her own home. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. I love the Olmsted story. It's a great example of how one person actually changed the world for a lot of other people.
Yes.
I am thinking, I'm actually getting emotional while I heard that story, because that case and seeking the least restrictive environment is a very personal story for us and for our family, with my daughter, who was placed outside of district in a special purpose school. And that became the least restrictive, because when she was in special education, she was pulled out for every discipline. With a language-based learning disability, it taps into reading, writing, math, speaking, social interactions. And so being in a language-based program in fifth grade became the least restrictive environment. And I think of the protective factors that environment has provided for her in terms of her mental well-being, and the fact that she's been so supported in her educational environment and the social opportunities of being with peers that struggle in the same ways. So I got emotional because I remember how many years we had to go over what is the least restrictive environment. And finally, at a certain age, it became that putting her in a specialized school became that, because she was out of the classroom so much. So I love that story.
Yeah, it looks different for different people, but I get troubled when people start building housing specifically for people with disabilities, really intending for it not to be restrictive, but then wondering, is it going to end up being restrictive anyway, out of necessity, because you're trying to protect so many people with support needs in the same space, that are you going to have to restrict them in some way?
Yeah, I mean, that's how Laconia became Laconia. Was,
Right.
good intentions. And then it just becomes an untenable situation if you
Right.
don't keep a good stewardship over it, if you don't fund it appropriately, if you don't train people appropriately. But I think that the Olmsted decision, what it did for our society was it highlighted what choice means. I know that's not specifically part of it, but for me, it's about having the opportunity to choose what is best for you.
Right.
And so where you land in that, as long as it's your choice, then that's the aim, that's the goal, know. And I think that's where the special words of least restricted environment were actually very brilliantly used.
Yes.
Yes. In this. So heads up, there is a new movement happening in America where people are starting to talk about the fact that they think that the Olmsted decision was a mistake.
Oh.
And so that is something that we definitely need to continue to keep our eye on, because as we know, policy, we want to think it's written in stone, but it's not.
Right.
And so we have to continue to be the watchdogs to make sure that that type of legislation does not fall into bad intention hands.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. And I think bringing it back to the decision, I love what Vanessa said about choice, because in my ideal world, universal design for learning would be part of our public education system, and every learner would be able to sit together in community. But that's not where we're at right now. So least restrictive is where we are.
It's a good dream, though.
Yeah. So thank you, ladies, both of you, for sharing your stories. I'm going to highlight Tiffany Hammond today, who's a prominent autistic author, advocate, and storyteller who's significantly influenced discussions on autism, disability justice, and intersectionality. I, as well as both of you, picked a Black woman who is at the intersection of autism, communication, and identifying as a Black woman. She's best known for her platform, Fidgets and Fries, her social media name, where she shares personal narratives that challenge prevailing perceptions of autism and highlights the experiences of Black autistic individuals. She has a master's degree in developmental psychology from Liberty University, and she's a mother of 2 autistic sons. She leverages her personal experiences to guide and support others navigating similar journeys. Her activism focuses on reframing autism, not as a burden, but as a unique aspect of identity, empathizing the importance of understanding and inclusion. 2 years ago, she wrote an incredible book. It was written as a children's book, but I will tell everybody that I hope it can be in the footnotes so we can have everybody read it. It is not just a children's book. It is absolutely phenomenal. It's called A Day with No Words. It became a #1 New York Times bestseller. The book offers a heartfelt glimpse into the life of an autistic, non-speaking boy who communicates using AAC or a tablet, reflecting the real-life experiences of the Hammond family. And it's been praised for its authentic portrayal of nonverbal communication and its role in fostering empathy and understanding amongst its readers. It's phenomenal. Through her social media presence, particularly with Fidgets and Fries, Hammond shares insights into her family's daily life, their challenges, the stereotypes they face, and she advocates for systemic change. Her storytelling and educational content have cultivated a supportive community that values inclusivity and representation. She has another book coming out in 2022. It's going to be a second picture book, How Do You Spell Belong? The upcoming work is anticipated to continue her mission of highlighting diverse experiences within the community and promoting a message of belonging and acceptance. I just really quickly wanted to talk about the intersection of race and disability and communication, and the importance of why I picked Tiffany Hammond is the intersectionality. And the intersectionality, for those that aren't familiar with the term, refers to how social identities like race, gender, disability, and socioeconomic status intersect to create the unique experiences of discrimination and or privilege. Tiffany Hammond is a masterclass in intersectionality because she's a Black woman. She's an autistic adult. She's also mother to 2 autistic sons, one of whom is non-speaking, and she's a storyteller and an advocate, and in many ways tells her creative experience through words, her use of words, and the way that she shares on social media is something that is hard to put into words unless you follow her, because it is so beautifully constructed that you get such a visual for her everyday experiences of raising her 2 sons and her marriage to her partner. So the thing that was important to me about bringing light to Tiffany Hammond and her family's experience is that Black autistic children are much more likely to be misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, and or criminalized. Black families often face greater scrutiny from schools, medical professionals, and the systems that we live in. Often, autistic Black children are misidentified with mental health conditions that are not accurate. The autism narrative is often centered on white, male, and speaking experiences, leaving out many whom don't fit that mold. The last part I just wanted to bring up that I think is so important is highlighting that non-speaking does not mean non-thinking. Non-speaking autistic people may use what's called AAC, or an augmentative and alternative communication device, which is usually a tablet or an iPad. It can also be letter cards or letter boards. Tiffany's oldest son uses an AAC device. Her beautiful book that I described earlier, A Day with No Words, was inspired by their daily life. Just one more thing is that communication is a human right, and speech is only one way to do it. Society often underestimates intelligence and disrespects autonomy when a person doesn't speak. being non-speaking does not mean being passive or incapable of forming deep relationships and expressing complex thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, because I did not know about Tiffany, and I obviously am a book lover, and I think that the power of books, especially children's books, to open people's minds and open their worlds it's so valuable.
She's masterful in her little bites on social media too. She can write a short narrative of something that happens in a parking lot, and you are there with her in that moment. And it's just so artistic. Her writing style and her use of word is, I kept thinking she's an artist. She's an author, but I want to say an artist as well. And her medium is just storytelling. So I encourage everybody that's listening to please give her a follow. And I think, again, she has so much to offer when thinking about BIPOC individuals and just the intersectionality that often I know myself with the amount of privilege my family has is something that I really wanted to lean into and understand more doing advocacy so that I can think when I'm showing up for individuals who may not be present with me.
Yeah, that's great. Wouldn't it be great to do a future episode on something around like what does autism look like? Because everyone and even now, especially, we keep hearing this narrative that this perception of autistic people is becoming narrower and narrower. And I would love to be able to talk more about that.
I think so misunderstood. I think because, as we know, autism is a spectrum, but what is so unique about autism is people think of it as a linear spectrum, and autism is a circle. And if we think about the dots, the infinite amount of presentations.
Yes.
Right?
I was reading a criticism of the show Love on the Spectrum, and that's one thing that this person was pointing out. The spectrum, there are many different spectrums. Saying love on the spectrum is misleading.
And calling somebody a spectrum, they're on the spectrum. No, I'm always like, no.
We're all on a spectrum. Seriously.
We're all on many different
We're all on many spectrums.
At the same time.
Yeah, no, I can see that. But I mean, think about media real quick. Don't want to get too off topic, but media is made by people who look and live and have the same socioeconomic status, and they're in this little world, and they're creating these an extension of their world, and putting it out there as a brand. So that's something you have to think about when you're watching those kinds of things.
And what killed me when I was reading an interview by the creator of Love on the Spectrum, and he was calling someone who criticized him ableist. I was like, okay, slow your roll, buddy.
Pat's like, I have a presentation for you.
I watched 2 episodes, I think, of the first season, and I had to turn it off when they were zooming into somebody's face who was struggling to get noodles into their mouth. I can't get noodles into my mouth no matter how hard I try with the fork and twirling them. And I kept thinking, anybody struggles to get noodles into their mouth seamlessly without any sort of stuff getting on their face. And when they zoomed into this poor man, I just shut it off because I was like, that was just so dehumanized. I wouldn't want anybody to zoom into my mouth while I'm eating. I'm sorry. People would just be horrified.
Right. Yeah. I never watched it because just the idea of those things just is it's too much for me.
My thing is, if I'm getting criticized something, I need to watch it, and I need to consider alternate viewpoints. So, yeah. I made myself watch it.
glad you survived that.
Yeah, good for you.
Well, a little trauma never.
So, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I will make sure that gets into the show notes.
Okay. The part about the noodles?
The noodles,
Yeah.
the books,
Yes.
her social media.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, all of that.
Thank
Because
you.
I want to check it out.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So I chose Jazzie Collins as the person that I wanted to highlight, and along the lines of intersectionality, because Jazzie was like the ultimate intersectionalist. So I became interested in Jazzie when I learned that while I was residing in San Francisco as a young punk, she was one neighborhood over, kicking butt and taking names. And I'm sad when I think about how I missed the opportunity to engage with her and her work. However, as a non-native little white girl, I was instructed to never go to that neighborhood, that it was too dangerous. And by the way, the Mission District is now one of the most sought-after real estate areas in San Francisco. So another regret I have is that I didn't buy a walk-up.
Totally.
So Jazzie was an activist and community organizer, and she took the idea of collective liberation and she shaped it into an unstoppable force. So here's the list of rights that she worked for: trans rights, disability rights, economic rights, minority rights, senior rights, tenants' rights, and labor rights, just to name a few. She was a volunteer and organizer for Senior and Disability Action. She was very focused on the intersection of disability and aging at a long time ago when no one was talking about this stuff. She was a chairperson of the San Francisco's LGBT Aging Policy Task Force, managing the operations of the 6th Street Agenda Food Pantry, founded Queers for Economic Equality, which is now Queen. She served on the board of directors of the San Francisco Trans March. And in 2003, her advocacy with the Prop L committee led to an increase in the minimum wage in San Francisco. When she was diagnosed with HIV during a time when those who suffered from the illness were stigmatized and ignored, she was open about it, and she invited others to be open about it with her. And she kind of took them under her wing and said, stand by me and we're going to talk about this together and we're in a safe space. And 2 years after her death in 2013, the first homeless shelter in the United States for adult gay community was opened in her honor, and it's called Jazzie's Place. She organized a number of protests as well as the city's annual Trans March, and she was the chair of both the LGBT Aging Policy and Senior Disabled Housing Task Forces. Jazzie was a community manager for an organization dedicated to defending the rights of seniors and disabled people called Senior and Disability Action. She also served on multiple boards and task forces throughout the city to ensure that there was someone at the table to advocate for people often left out of these discussions. She knew the importance of showing up where decisions were being made, and she demanded to be heard. She localized her activist practices, focusing on San Francisco to bring about a better quality of life for everyone in her community. And I think about Jazzie a lot. She died of AIDS in 2013. And as one of her best friends said, she died the way she lived: poor, busy, and loved.
Oh.
And I think that she is just a great example of someone who, at a time when intersectionality wasn't even in our lexicon, that she was living it and practicing it. And she was like a lover of human beings. And I think that her particular skills at organizing and getting people motivated to join her and be part of something that wasn't going to bring profits, it wasn't going to bring fame and fortune, like she just had her neighborhood and she was like, I'm going to live my life making this place better for everyone. And she was much loved.
Yeah, wow, she sounds amazing, a force of nature. I love learning about people from San Francisco. I mean that's where. No, is that where the 504 put it? With
that was Berkeley, California. Mm-hmm. The 504 sit-in, wasn't it?
Was it Berkeley? I thought it was San Francisco.
Maybe it was.
I'm pretty sure it was San Francisco.
It's been a long day.
I mean, it's even worse for me because I have it in a presentation somewhere. No, I'm pretty sure it was San Francisco. So
that would make sense, though.
We have so much to learn. You wonder why they can figure it out and we can't.
Well, that's something that I reflect on a lot about her and other activists. As you know, I'm very interested in Black Panther activists and the work that they did in the community. And it's almost like I do try to mull over, how do you become a person who is just really on the ground, motivated every day to be a part of movements that carry, the torch of liberation, right? And you're just like an everyday person. That's the part that I'm like, oh.
Well, you got me when you said I started water working when you said that she died exactly how she lived. And then it started with poor, and then all I kept thinking about is healthcare. I went right away to, I wonder what her health needs were and how her health needs were being addressed. And I am thinking, as you're talking about who she was, the time she was, it was the 90s, right?
It was, well, she died in 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel as though I'm wondering if being less less embraced into the tech world allows you to have more space and community. I keep thinking about how isolated we are when we are doing so much Zoom and so much virtual. I haven't teared up on a podcast yet with Pat, and I've teared up 3 times since we've been sitting together. And I keep thinking about how much more emotive and how much more just grounded in my feelings I am when you're in community. And I'm wondering if there is something about just the organizing and the being in community instead of more isolated in our homes and using technology to connect, if there is anything around that.
I believe that there is. I do. I think that when I think it localizes us more, and we've talked about this before. I believe in local activism because I think when you are with your neighbors, you immediately have a common cause, and that is the environment that you live in, the school that your children go to, the store that you shop at. And so that helps me focus and engage more. And I think that I think technology serves great purposes for organization.
Definitely. And accessibility.
For sure. Yes, absolutely.
I do virtual mental health counseling, so I'm all for.
Right.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be a replacement for being in the same space and being celebrating your community. Because to me, activism is celebrating your community. You're doing it because you care, because you dream of a common future. You believe in each other. And so that is, that's where I think that what I call, Facebook activists, that's where they go wrong when I invite them, come to my housing thing. It's at the library, and, they don't show up. And it's well, are you really engaging in the community? And I get that some people can't, but many people can, and they don't.
And I keep thinking about how contagious our hope and our vision can be, right? Like when we are in shared community and we set a goal and an intention, there's an accountability and an energy we feed off of one another that can be so powerful. I agree. I mean, there's a place for technology, of course, and it can benefit us in so many ways, but I'm wondering if this is like a call to action for our listeners to get in community if they can, if they have the ability, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like lately there's been a bit of a reawakening of that. I mean, I've been to more protests in the past 3 months than I think I've been to in my entire life. So, yeah, I think that's people are realizing that. People are realizing because they're so. If you are just getting news, it can feel like you are the only one that thinks it's a certain way or feels a certain way, and then you get out to a protest and you realize that, wow, like a lot of people understand what I'm saying. A lot of people, and I understand how they're feeling, and so it's not always, unfortunately, completely accessible, and that's something I struggle with too. Right? If we're gonna wait to make everything perfectly accessible, are we gonna be missing opportunities? But then I don't like doing things or going to things where I feel like someone's not going to feel like it's accessible to them.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think choice too. Like I think always just having the choice is such, we talked about that. Oh my gosh, full circle.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about choice 30 minutes ago.
That's what it's all about.
Oh my
it's all
gosh.
about choice.
Oh, that's so funny because we had a thing for one of my children, a graduation thing last night, and I actually posted about it, how inaccessible it was for some of my family members. And we gave the choice. We said, you can come to this awards thing, but this is what it will look like. This is what it will entail. And one said, oh, I can manage. The other said, no, I can't manage that space. Okay. So it just brought me back to choice. I think calling for action, but everybody having the choice whether or not they have the energy, right? If they have the stamina, if they have the capacity, the ability.
But to end, because we're running on time, and I hate to wrap it up, but we're going to carry this on in another episode. But to wrap up to what you're saying, there are opportunities for people to activate and organize and be a part of moving forward, to carry on the torch of justice in so many different ways, and that everyone has a way that they can do it. And if they need support in finding that way, then they should reach out to us.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. And if they're a person who says, I want to be involved, I want to be in community, but I have these barriers, well, we can get together, we can put our heads together, and we could figure out how you can be a part of something. And because we need everybody doing everything all the time to get where we want to go.
I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to meet up with you guys again.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.